Okay, we're okay to proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Wanda Minnings and I'm the Chair of the Corporate Services Committee. It is 1:20 p.m. and I would like to call this meeting to order. Agenda item B, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Agenda item C, we have no delegations. So we're going to move to agenda item D. It's our consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull an item from the consent agenda? Member Cox.
Yep. I would like to pull D.2.1, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
Certainly, the motion reads that the agenda be adopted, including consent items with the exception of item D 2.1.
Thank you. And do I have a mover? Member McIntyre, seconded by Member Brennan. All in favor and carried. Thank you. Agenda item F. We have a number of reports today from officials for direction. We'll start with item F 1.1, Blackline Consulting, the Township of Severn Organizational Review Final Report. And I'd like to pass this to Madam CAO to introduce our consultants.
Thank you. Through the chair. In late fall last year, council approved an organizational review so that we could have a more holistic look at plans for the future. We did an RFP in December and selected Blackline Consulting early January. Ian Shelley from Blackline Consulting is here to go over the final report with council. Welcome, Ian, and I think Allison's going to run your presentation for you. Next.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council, and I appreciate the opportunity to present directly to you on both the findings and the recommendations we had within the report. When we came into this review, there was two dimensions that we were contemplating as we looked at it. The first dimension was around the current organization. Was it adequate? Was it well structured? Did it have the right roles? And the second dimension was around the future needs. And I'm going to walk through initially our findings when we looked at the current organization and what we thought, into our recommendations on what we feel the organization should consider changing, and then finally into our forecast of what we think the organization may need in the coming years. We move on, Allison, I think 2. One more. To start a review of this nature, we do try and gather information as broadly as we can, particularly the views and perspectives of staff. So on the right-hand side here, you'll see the level of consultation we're able to achieve in this. We did 13 one-on-one interviews, 6 group focus groups with staff, and received 22 survey responses. So given the size of the staff, that's a reasonable representation. And certainly everyone in the organization was given the opportunity to provide us with input. If you look on the left, you'll see the list of things that we gathered and reviewed to develop our findings. The one I do want to point to is the second from the bottom, which is referred to as service index. This will become relevant when I talk about the forecast, but we have a general model of the municipality, and it lists around 150 individual services. And we use this to what we refer to as profile. It's getting done. We ask staff to fill in and say, well, for the service, cemetery maintenance, how many staff do that? How many cemeteries are there? How often do they get maintained? You know, what do you spend on it? So we ask a range of questions, try and get a sense of those. In this case, we are primarily concerned with getting the workload. You know, how much work is done to deliver that service? And that was a key input to our forecasting. Effectively, what we said is that this is how much work you have today. What will change that workload? You know, if population grows, does that affect that workload? And in some cases, the answer is most definitely. You know, if you get more population and more households, you're going to issue more tax bills. In other cases, population growth in and of itself wouldn't affect the workload. It's other factors. So when we came to the forecasting, we associate what we call a work driver. And we use population, we use households, we use lane kilometers, we use recreation space, and we associate that. And we say, as your population changes, how do they get affected? How much recreation space are you going to have? How many lane kilometers are you going to have? Then we go back to the service and say, well, how does that change the service, then the staffing needs for that service? So that's a real critical element that probably wasn't fully exposed within the report of how we did the forecasting. But it's basically taking the work you do today, saying how will that grow over time, and therefore what staffing do we need? Can you move on, please? There's two items I also want to highlight. The first one is we looked at the strategic plan and the priorities that this council has put forward for the term. One that stood out to us was the focus on customer service, and I will say that is that is definitely the municipal trend of this term is customer service, and whether that's a reaction to COVID or whether it's just the level of maturity. When we looked at the organization, customer service is not focus of the organization today. So we wanted to flag that to say it's a strategic priority, and that's part of the driver why we've brought customer service forward and said, well, if that's important and it's a priority, there's the changes we think you would need to make to deliver on that priority. We move on one, Alison, please. The second observation I want to make is that you've reviewed, received, approved a range of action plans and master plans recently. They imply change. They imply change of service standards. They imply additional services potentially. That isn't factored into the current workloads that we can observe. And so when you see the forecast model that we produce, that considers today's workload. It doesn't necessarily factor the changes, for instance, the economic development strategy. There isn't a workload there that we can look at today. So as you move forward, these master plans may have other implications that we can't foresee at this point in time. Move on to 7, please. One more. Our first phase of work looks at, we refer to it as discovery. It's us understanding what's there today and forming an opinion on good, bad, or indifferent. Effectively, do we like it? Do we not like what we see? We consider a few things. One is the literal structure and whether that's effective structure. We consider how activities are grouped together. And activity grouping is how you form your teams, your divisions, your departments. We consider capacity, and we consider roles. Do we have the skill sets, the capabilities? It's not a direct consideration, but whenever we look at an organization, we will hear and observe what I would refer to as softer things, or cultural things. We don't, if we believe they are relevant and they seem to have merit, we'll bring those forward as well. So we don't see the organizational review just being about boxes. There are other factors to how an organization functions. And again, I'll touch on those a bit later. So the first thing we observed was that the CAO has more direct reports than we would like. And you can critique having too many reports in many different ways. You can say, well, is that too many people to spend an adequate amount of managerial time with? If I'm dividing my time by 8 people, is that an adequate dedication? You can consider whether there's other factors the CAO should be doing that's beyond direct management. There's all sorts of dimensions you can look at, but when you get a high number like this, you could consider, are we feeling overly specialized? The CAO suddenly is running a whole municipality, but beneath it, we think we need to divide it by 8 groups because so there's all different ways of looking at this specific one, but it's one that we do voice a concern with regularly. It's not uncommon in municipalities. It's still something that we feel can be improved upon. So the first observation of the CAO having too many direct reports. We move on one, please, Alison. Conversely, and I'll explain this chart, we add up the number of people that report to a supervisory position, and we map it out on a chart. On the left side, you've got the CAO, second to most reports in the organization. Down on the right side, we would like every supervisor to have an adequate number of reports so that they're spending most of their time supervising. If they're not, if they have too few, then they're going to be doing the work of the people they're supervising as well. And that's, again, commonly the case, particularly in municipalities where they are challenged with capacity. the lever is often having supervisory positions doing some of the delivery work, and that's not optimal. You know, it's economically slightly not optimal. So you can see in the situation at the moment, what we're reporting is there are probably 60% of the supervisory positions has fewer direct reports than we would ideally like. And the CAO has some of the most reports. So that's fundamentally is one of the things that we wanted to try and address. Now, some of those positions, particularly in a smaller municipality, we can't do anything about. That's just the reality. Some of them, it's just down to the municipality. We need to have that position and there's no choice. So we understand some of these we can't change, but we always look into that. Can we restructure it so the supervisors are optimized? We can move on one, please. We did get substantial feedback from staff about growing workloads and growing backlogs, which was one of our inputs to the question of capacity. The other factor to this is flexibility, and this is a challenge for, again, many smaller municipalities. Is almost every staff is a key position. You know, if I'm absent for a reason, and we asked staff, does anyone pick up your work when you're absent? The answer was largely no. That's a challenge, and that will exacerbate backlogs if we're, because it's very reasonable for absences to occur, whether it's vacation or anything else. So staff certainly feeling that workloads are an issue. We move on one. Three inputs to this. First one was talking to people and asking, where do we want, or where do you feel you need additional skills or capacity? Second input was our observation of what work is getting done, and again, looking at saying what skills or where do we see need for capacity. And then the third one, which you will have seen in the report, is we did compare the workload and staffing to peers. I think there were 6 peers. Some of the data points from our own database, having worked with other municipalities, we can bring in some data points of larger groups. But those 3 inputs of our experience, staff perspectives, and looking at other peers yielded this set of capability and additional positions where we said that these are areas that we feel the municipality has a need for these positions at the moment. I'm going to pick on the engineering. That was one where we know from other municipalities and the conversation here that using contracted engineering services currently is highly problematic, that the capacity isn't there in the system, and that delays are universal, to be honest. And I think it was you, Laurie, said, what leverage do I have? It's probably, 2 engineering firms in the area. So, that was one where we said, yeah, that fits with our experience. That's feedback from the community, from the interviews, from staff, that this is a problem area for. So that's an example where we suggested that an engineering position be brought in-house. The economics should be there in a business case when you look at how much is being spent on contracted services. So from a pure financial perspective, a business case can go behind it. GIS as an example is an area where it's fundamental that you have records of your asset and your infrastructure, and that they are accurate, up to date, complete, all of those sort of things. So key capability that wasn't evident in the organization. So positions that we've identified that we felt either through capacity or skill would be beneficial for the organization to have. Through the survey, we do like to sort of put the charts up and do the, happy, neutral, sad around some of the questions. But I have to say, generally, the surveys we received back were quite positive about the environment, satisfied with the work environment, felt they had what they needed to do their job. So generally a positive feedback from staff. And as I said earlier, you could take this as a cultural commentary, around the work environment and the leadership. So did want to present that back so people have something to, to have a sense on generally how the organization is feeling. You can go on one, please. One of the areas that was that staff reported less satisfaction with was communication and collaboration. This is not uncommon. And I was told very early on in my career that I needed to be professionally skeptical, which meant when I see things like this, I'm supposed to say, I don't believe that. And often that's the conclusion we come to, that there actually isn't problems. It's that, you know, people want information that they don't need to have. So it's not it's communication problems. That wasn't the case when we went through the sort of examples that people gave us. It was very material. It was information that arguably they did need, and it wasn't flowing. And sometimes resolving things like this, even though it sounds a bit cultural, we're not communicating between departments, requires structural solutions to get communication to happen. So putting in place the structures that mean people have to do the communication is unfortunately one of the only levers to make this sort of thing progress. You want it to be embedded that we are just an organization that communicates well, but to get there is through practice. And to practice, you need to turn up for the practice, whatever that might be. We move on 1 hour, please. We do look at tenure, and this is a slightly difficult chart to read, so I'll do a quick interpretation. At the top of the chart is the most senior people. At the bottom of the chart is the less senior people. And the color coding is how long they've been in the organization. So red is less than 5 years. I think it's dark purple is over 30. What you can quite clearly see is that virtually every layer, over 50% of the staff have been in the organization less than 5 years. Now, most of that we believe are retirements or new positions. It's not an attrition problem. Sometimes when we look at this and we see, those red bars are very high, it's because people are leaving and they're going to another position. That wasn't necessarily the case, but it does bring another organizational characteristic, which is that the new people don't know everyone else. And when we go back to that communication question, a lot of people said, well, I don't know what other people do. I don't know who does that. And we often attribute this to what we call professional networks. When you're in an organization for a number of years, you make connections with people. I've worked with you 3 times. I know that's what you do. When you get high levels of relatively new individuals in the organizations, those networks don't exist. And I think that's as big a factor on the communication front as anything else, is people knowing other people well enough at a professional level. Not a personal level. I'm not going to come in and say everyone needs to be friends and hang out on weekends. It's at a professional level that I know you, I know what you do, and I know I can go to you when I need that done. And again, as I mentioned with communications, it appears that the networks are not forming naturally. And it may be that you need to insert some structures to help them build the cross-functional networks. We can move on. 2 actually. One of the other pieces of feedback we received that was on the cultural side, that's difficult to substantiate, is that decisions weren't pushed to the lowest effective level. Now, it's difficult for us to substantiate that because decisions are happening day to day. It's not something that's enshrined anywhere that we can point to and say, look. But it did come up regularly in the consultations. And I mentioned to Laurie that when we do these reviews, there's always a word or a phrase that's unusual and it gets used time and time again. And that tells us that that's a conversation that's happening outside of our interviews. That's just normal conversation in this organization. And that always sort of piques my interest. And this was one of the factors that came up more often than we would expect. It's not common for people to say this to us in interviews. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not unusual or anything. It's just not common that people comment on that to us. So again, not something we can point to and say, look, there's the example, but we did suggest later on that it may be worth looking at that, a more formal review of who's making what decisions. There's an efficiency piece to it around, if it has to go up 3 layers, that's not very efficient if it doesn't need to. So that was something, as I said, one of those softer things that came through that we wanted to highlight. We can move on to great. Turning to recommendations. We've phased out these recommendations, and I'll flash up the timeline a bit later, but we split them in two top half are those organizational things that I talked about, the more obvious boxes on the charts, reporting lines. The bottom half here are those softer things I talked about, the communication, the delegations. So, the first one we've put forward is those positions and adding them. I think some of those positions, through discussion with the CAO, you may conclude are more urgent than others. I don't think they're all of equal urgency, and certainly they could be sequenced over a number of periods. It's not something that has to happen immediately, and the organization is managing in most areas. I think you as council would have your own sense of the areas that are under the most pressure. I'm sure you will have heard about certain things from residents about where they're not feeling they're getting the response you want. But that's a conversation to have to match up the positions that we've identified with the organization and your sense of where the highest level of pressure is. We've identified a customer service function, or a central customer service function, of taking a number of individuals who we believe today do largely customer service, but they're decentralized. And by decentralization, I don't literally mean physically. They actually just serve their area. When I talk about centralized, what I mean is you will serve anyone. So this group, they could be physically co-located, and that's probably the direction you would go in with this. But taking those customer service individuals, building them so they are more interchangeable, they can share the workload. It creates greater flexibility in the customer service. It gives us, if we've got an absence, we've still got a customer service function that's addressing any request that comes in. So building out into more general customer service capabilities, which takes, a raft of training. There may be a limit ultimately to that, where you say that even though that person does that today for that department, that's still too technical for us to generalize. But a raft of what they should be able to do should be more general customer service, and forming a function then that can provide and look to the priority in the strategic plan. The third one here, structurally, we have as a corporate services function, and this serves a number of purposes. One is we think corporate services is a common function. It allows you to focus on what the objective of a corporate services group is, which is servicing the rest of the organization. It goes a long way to helping with the number of reports that go into Laurie, of bringing together functions that we think in many organizations have commonality. So we put forward a corporate services function phased over a number of years. It's not something that we've said do in one go. There's a number of changes. I think there's 3 or 4 steps to building the corporate services function. And the last one we've touched on is where it's possible. We use the phrase in the report, when natural change allows. We're not suggesting that people are moved from positions. One of the things with a long-term organization view like this is, someone may leave, someone may retire. That gives you an opportunity, and what you have here is a plan for when opportunity presents. Arguably, there are other changes you will act on and you'll move forward with, but with the layers points is that we think there's as change occurs, there will be opportunities to do that increase the number of reports to certain positions. So having the plan and the concept here means when that happens, you can come forward quickly. It's not a case of thinking, what should we do now? On the bottom layer, I've talked about some of these. We've talked about facilitating that collaboration and putting in place some mechanisms to have people collaborate. Review the delegations we've talked about. One we haven't talked about is on the right-hand side that I want to touch on, and that's cross-training. I talked about those, the many key positions. I talked about, the customer service cross-training, but it doesn't have to end there. There are other positions in the organization where you could formally cross-train. I do like the idea that you go further than just the training, that you have some form of rotation where people are doing the other job. However you go about that, there's lots of different ways of combining it. But getting to the point where you're starting to build out small teams of people who can do the same thing and build in a bit more flexibility into the organization, a bit more resilience. That change and many of the others would obviously require time and capacity. It's on top of what people are doing today. In the future, that would normalize once the cross-training has happened and the rotations are put in place. But I think that's one of the only tools available to deal with that key person challenge that smaller organizations face is to build these, you know, in and of itself. Could it help with the collaboration and communication? Probably. So, you know, that's an example of a very structured, firm thing that would be temporary. The training would go on for a period and then it would be complete and people would be in a new form of working. We did present in the report our suggestion on the sequencing of these recommendations. And as I say, we put it over a multi-year period. I want to highlight the bar in the middle. It's just some time in 1 to 3 years. We don't need to be specific, but we put forward what we think, you know, from our external perspective, the sequence could be for these changes occurring. Some of the earlier ones, as I reflected earlier, you may have subsequent discussions to say, do we agree that that is as important as B? I think as much as anything, you have a vehicle here to have that conversation. We've got a starting point. So we think these are the priorities, you know, in the next 2 years. We think this is a priority for the next 3 years. Beyond that, we think this is when you can move to. So we've included a schedule of how you can go and implement it. And in the report, we sort of talk about packages of activities as well. You know, the corporate services happening over 3 or 4 steps. Should be the population growth. The last piece of work that we did was the forecast that I introduced earlier. You do have. There is a forecast that's being prepared by. I'm just going to call it Development Charges Review that is doing a population forecast. What we've done is our own population forecast based on recent population growth, not long-term population growth. And so we did have a discussion of how that population forecast that's coming through the development charges will be different than this population forecast. And I would propose this as a high growth scenario. If we say we're not certain what's going to happen with population, what we've forecast is a high growth population forecast. The other forecast you'll receive, maybe that's a medium growth forecast. It's a range. So we've looked based on your recent history and forecast that forward 10 years, and it brings a population growth of around 20%. We've translated that into households based on the average occupancy in households. And we've translated that into road kilometers based on the expectation that you have for additional development at the moment. And we've also translated that into recreation space based on the ratio of population to recreation space you have at the moment. So you can see a range of growth over the next 10 years on what we refer to as workload drivers. We've got more roads, then we've got more work to do on roads. So we use it. So that's the basis of our population forecast. You can move on one. Just one. You've got 2 charts here that are not very easy to see on this, but they are in the report as well. The top chart is management staff or supervisory staff, and the bottom chart is general staff. On the left-hand side, we've got the 2025 staff numbers by department. So each of those bars, colored bars, is one of the departments, and the number of staff based on our additional positions that we highlighted earlier in the report. Then using those growth forecasts, we've then looked at how many additional staff you would need. So if today one staff manages 50 kilometers of road and it goes up 50, we need an additional staff person to manage that. So as you go across the bottom chart, that's the growth you see in staff positions. And over the next 10-year period, that's 9 positions in our forecast. And we've identified which department that position would occur in. We haven't identified what that position would specifically do. And certainly, you know, that once you get to that point, you have to do it. But we have said it's in that department, and that's additional staff. We used your current ratio of supervisors to staff. So if you've got a ratio today of one supervisor has 3 staff, and we add 3 more staff, then we need 2 supervisors. So we've kept that ratio, and that's what the top chart shows you, and that's 5 additional supervisory positions. If you are able over time to increase the ratio of staff to supervisors, it may not be as many as 5 that you would require at that point. So this stays with the current ratio and says, if you just stay as you're shaped today, 9 staff positions based on the workload, 5 managerial positions to manage the increased number of staff. Just the next one and then we'll finish. So just to quickly recap what I've been through, we do feel that there are some areas where additional capacity and skills are warranted. When we compared Severn to peers, that it confirmed some of those observations. Reinforcing the workload, our forecast of 5 managerial positions and 9 staff positions is based on current workload. It's not based on additional work that might come through the master plans and or the strategic plan itself. We've highlighted some of the cultural changes that we think would help the functioning of the organization that largely come from feedback from staff and how they're feeling about the organization. And then we've provided a multi-year plan of evolving the organization over the next 5 and ultimately 10 years potentially with the forecast staffing that we put forward. And on that, I'm going to stop and open for questions.
Okay, I'm looking to the committee. Any questions? Member Cox?
Thank you very much. I enjoyed reading this. It made sense. It was common sense. I like the fact that you looked at workflows and who should be working together and making it more cohesive so that it would flow better and people would know what was going on. I understand the cultural part of it. I was out in the workplace and that is an important part. And I wondered maybe if this was a COVID residue because it's 0 to 5 people who seem to be the ones and we're just sort of coming out of it. It's been 2 years, maybe 3, if we're lucky. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you very much. I like this. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for our employee because we only have one. For Lori, it will challenge her to take parts of this and work to make our corporation a more efficient and our staff a happier, efficient place to be. And I look forward to seeing how we do in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Burkett?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Echo some of the comments that Member Cox said, but I want to thank you for this. This is the first time in 14 years that I've seen something like this. It was enjoyable to read, but what I did like was how you engaged our staff to be open with you to look at what the organization is lacking. And this isn't, we may not implement this at all. I don't know, but it now gives council something to look at when our CAO looks at her staff and what she may or may not need. And when she brings it to us, we can go back to this for reference, but it gives them a more wholesome perspective of how our staff are working over in that side of the building and how they do their job and how they make our residents happy. Not us. We're just here to make decisions, but ultimately it's our residents that meet with them every day. But again, very well done, and just want to say thank you.
Member Brennan?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I very much enjoyed your presentation and the report. I do like the background analysis. I have a few questions and a couple of comments. You talk about outsourcing the IT function, yet we're short of IT. I am confused at the strategy there.
One of the challenges was, it's similar with engineering, but with IT, is the breadth of knowledge you need. And so to run an IT function, I would argue, however small you are, you would need at least 4 people to get the breadth of knowledge you would need. At the moment, you have 1 person. One of the most effective ways to get a breadth of knowledge is to contract it with a larger organization and pay for 1 FTE, but get access to 10, 12, 15 people on a small slither of their time. So that's our concept on the outsourcing, is how you can get a greater scope of knowledge while still only paying for what you need.
Thank you. Yeah, so you weren't talking about outsourcing the whole shebang. One would be still here under your scenario. Like
However,
we have days like today, I'm thinking.
however you choose to structure the arrangement, you need some local accountability regardless with an outsourced relationship. How big that is at your discretion. You know, is it 1 person or is it half of one? Your discretion, but you can't outsource accountability.
Thank you. My second question relates to number of reports. I come from the provincial world in my previous life. And there was always a big push to have 8 to 10 reports to a supervisor or manager, lower so at the higher director and ADM levels. But you know, since the 90s, that's been the trend, is getting rid of certain. I'll address that in another question. 5 supervisors to 9 staff, in my view, seems top heavy.
I completely agree, hence my commentary about if you're able to increase those ratios, that 5 would come down. Now, there's no doubt, you know, if you're in the province, you're dealing with hundreds of staff in total. That's not the number you're playing with. So can you get to, you know, from a ratio of 1 to 3 to 1 to 4? Maybe. Could you get to 1 to 5 as the organizational ratio? Probably not, but there's definitely room to do something there. And hence my presentation to say, with the current ratio, 5 to 9, if you can change that, it wouldn't be 5. Still be 9.
Thank you. Third question. Artificial intelligence promises within the next 5 to 10 years to reduce job requirements for legal people, accounting people, brokers. We don't have one of them here yet. At least I don't think so. And a lot of frontline staff because of the scenarios that they can do with auto minutes and auto scheduling and all of these types of things. I don't see anything about the coming changes there factored into this report, and I'd like your opinion on that.
I think that's a fair observation. We haven't put in AI as a factor. We have done with 3 other organizations, not AI per se, but when I mentioned that service index, one of the things we rated the service on is how adequate the technology was supporting it. And some services, they're not suitable for applying technology particularly. Other services, there is an enormous benefit from automation. We have done that with 3 other municipalities where we went through and said, well, how does that affect the staff you need? Out of that review, I would say it reduced the number of staff we were forecasting by about 10% if you had adequate technology support across all the services. So I offer that as a proxy. I don't think anyone knows fully what impact AI will actually have at the end of the day. But in looking at the application of technology that is common today and available to municipalities, at 3 other municipalities of a similar size to yourself, it was about an effect of reducing that 9 to 8. So it's about 10% reduction.
Thank you. Just one more question. It's not a question, actually, it's a comment. It's your comment on all of these strategies and so forth that we have brought forth, including decisions, well, next week, or primarily some of the stuff that went through today. It does make you think, whoa, we haven't even factored this stuff in here. So I would like to add one position to your plan. I hope the planners like this. To be considered by the CAO, since at the end of the day, this is all about decisions that she will make. Climate change planner. We have work coming up in watershed frameworks, remedial action plans, climate plan. We need to do more work on emissions, energy matters in the community, biodiversity, community engagement, natural asset management. These are all areas that are, I believe, emerging in progressive municipalities. I would look to King Township as one of those that are getting into these things. And I'd vote right away for one of those positions. So, but I want to acknowledge here, this is a very good report. It's a guide, and I know it's a guide for the CAO, and it'll help her, and it'll also obviously help us in our job as policy people at the end of the day. So, to the CAO, good luck.
Hi, over to Member Jansen. Thank you for joining us. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Member Minnings. I apologize for being late today. I got on the call as soon as I was able to.
Sorry, we're not able to hear you.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Are you able to hear me now? No?
Okay, we'll
Can you hear
move
me?
on, and hopefully you can continue to work on the access. Thank you. No other question. Oh, sorry, Member Cox.
I just would like to comment on the climate one that you were talking about. I think that could be a hybrid because we have SSEA and we have that knowledge with their base. So that would be something that, thank goodness we have them, that they may be able to provide a good service for, that would work with somebody in our organization, or we could utilize them to come in and help as a hybrid. I think that would be a very good thought, and it may be something that the other municipalities who have thoughts that they don't needed SSEA, it may be something that they might like to do. But thank you.
But if I may, and I agree, that's what I kept looking at, what the SSEA is supposed to do in the official plan, knowing the threats to the SSEA as an organization that are before us at this time. And I thought, man, we need an anchor somewhere. So that I was coming, not so different from your perspective. I thought, we need somebody here, to hold things if all breaks loose, if you know what I mean. Thanks.
Thank you.
Member McIntyre.
Thank you, through the chair. I'd like to just compliment you on your report as well. It's very easy read, easy to follow along with, and I think it's going to give our CAO an opportunity to cherry pick along the way in the next number of years where and what she can best use from your report. And I think that was the idea behind it at the beginning. So good report, easy to read and easy to follow along. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. On slide 10, what does GIS stand for? What's that acronym?
Geographic Information System.
It is. Okay, thank you. And just a comment, I agree with some of the suggestions you made around staff coverage solutions, et cetera. So that is good. One of the questions I have is how many, when you give us the percentages in the report, are they based on the entire FTE complement of the township, or are they based on the respondents to your survey, et cetera?
Where it relates to the staff perspectives, it's survey respondents.
Thank you. Member Cox?
Yep. Member Jansen, did you try holding down your space bar? There you go.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? No? I don't know.
Okay, over to the clerk. Do we have a motion?
The motion reads that council endorses the organizational review as a tool for the CAO for future organizational staffing, and that the CAO report to future budgets as required.
Thank you. Do I have a mover Moved by member Taylor, seconded by member Cox, all in favor and carried. Thank you. And thank you for the report. Sorry, member Cox.
Through the chair, unfortunately, member Jansen's audio is not working. So I'm wondering with that correspondence that came about the Slowpitch, because I know he wanted to speak to it and he can't speak, if we could defer that to then our next meeting when he would be here, so he would have an opportunity to speak to it because it is in his ward.
Okay, thank you. So that'll happen. We'll move correspondence item.
Yes, so
Sorry,
the
just
motion, the
lost-
motion then would be that the correspondence from the Coldwater Adult Slowpitch regarding gates at the Coldwater Bull Diamond be deferred to the June 26th council meeting.
Thank you all. And do I have a mover? Moved by member Cox, seconded by member Jansen. All in favor? Thank you, and carried. And do we have a motion then for the consultant report, or are we going to do one motion for all of section F?
I would believe council did it. That was the one to just endorse the review and that the CAO report to future budget years.
Thank you. Okay, clearly I need some caffeine. Okay, we're on item F 2.1 recreation report. Westshore Recreation Facility, the geothermal borehole and conductivity testing. Over to Director Belfry, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to pass this over to our new Manager of Capital Projects. He's been working on this initiative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Belfry. Good afternoon, committee. I'm happy to report that Director Belfry and I continue to progress design of the recently approved design upgrades for the Westshore Recreation Center. These include modern facility programming, an expansion of the upper level, and a zero carbon building standard. So a large component of reaching the zero carbon building standard is swapping the conventional heating and air conditioning with a geothermal heat pump and well field. So our sub-consultant, Jane Consultants, they are our mechanical engineer working under Chamberlain, and they specialize in sustainable building design, including geothermal systems. To help inform the design of that geothermal system, Jane have proposed a test borehole to analyze the subsurface conditions and to perform conductivity testing. So the conductivity testing will inform how much thermal transfer there is deep in the ground, inform the size of the loop field, the amount of wells required, and their spacing. This well is proposed to be drilled vertically and will be located in what will be the parking lot of the Westshore Rec Center. The future wells are also to be located in the parking lot. We did review a horizontal well field, but it did not seem to be preferred, potentially in conflict with a building expansion or other uses of that property in the future. Our consultants have stated that parking lots are the most frequent location of these vertical well fields. So a request for quotation was issued by Jane Consultants. We are awaiting receipt of the final quotes. The estimate is in the range of 50 to 65,000, but it's important to know that this is not a temporary well. And it will be put into operation once the entire well field is commissioned. So I am here asking for an additional budget of 65,000, as this is majority an expenditure of construction that we have not yet budgeted in 2024. We are still awaiting if a 2024 green and inclusive buildings intake will open. We will of course apply if one should open up. We would hope scoping of this facility as zero carbon should make it a preferred candidate for that fund. And we continue to look for additional grants that this project would be suitable for. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, member Cox.
Yeah, through the chair. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's something that we need to do. We need to become more green. What I would like to suggest is that possibly you get in contact with Adam Chambers' office and find out, he's our MP, and he told us when we chatted with him about this before, that to please contact him or his staff at any time, that they may get a handle on what's coming out or what's going in. And we will all keep our ears to the ground when we go to AMO to see if there's anything else we can find out about. But thank you very much.
Okay, Member Taylor?
Just through to Greg or John there, have you dealing with sustainable Severn Sound like John Main with I think you've been in touch with him, Craig, in the past?
Through the chair to the member, in the past, we haven't brought him up to speed on this action yet, but we did highlight it in our conversations at the last meeting we were at. With this newest development, we haven't brought him up to that yet, but we will. Yeah.
Thank you. One question from me. Is this an unexpected additional charge that you're bringing to us, or is this something that is part of getting the site ready for the rec center?
Through to you, Madam Chair. When Craig, Director Belfry, brought the design upgrades, this was one of the omissions included in that report. So this is kind of informing our geotechnical design and a little more kind of heavy construction getting into actually putting a well that will be operational for that facility.
Okay, thank you for that response. You're not aware of any other expenses that are going to be coming to us preparing the site? I'm just paying attention to the bottom line and the costs, and I understand that there are costs involved. I'm just wondering if there are other things that we're going to be seeing.
To you, Madam Chair, there are none at this time, but I would ask to maybe have a look at our April report to committee. There was a list of about a dozen items that were not yet accounted for in that proposal from Chamberlain.
Thank you. That's where I was going with this. Okay, so they're going to be coming in maybe one at a time or when you get to them. Okay, thank you. Member Burkett.
Thank you through Madam Chair and to Member Brennan's comments, climate change and what we're doing here with the community center. I got to commend both you, Craig and Colt, for bringing this report forward. Hopefully it does work out. It may be expensive to actually put it in at first, but in the long term, it will save us thousands and thousands of dollars if it works out. So thank you to both of you for bringing the report forward.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
Certainly, the motion reads that Recreation Report number R24-02010 dated June 19th, 2024. With respect to the Westshore Recreation Facility geothermal borehole and conductivity testing be received. And further that council approved the additional $65,000 to be funded, $58,500 from the development charge reserve and $6,500 from the recreation facilities reserve. And for that staff proceed with the described scope of work for the proposed borehole and conductivity testing when pricing is received to the upset limit of $65,000.
Thank you. Before I call for a mover and a seconder, I just have just a comment. Because there's still about a dozen items that are going to be coming to us, and that doesn't include the cost of building the structure. I'm just wondering if we could get a report on even various ranges of what those items are, because right now I'm just concerned that, if this one's 65,000, we still have 10 or 12 more, and we've already substantially increased the cost of the design, et cetera, without having anything prepared. Is that an opportunity there? Is that an option that we could have? I'm just concerned about the potential of approving things one at a time, and we're going to get so far down the road without a building. Thank you.
Through to you, Madam Chair. We'd be happy to bring back preliminary estimates of where we're at right now. And even we're working through that with the new footprint of the building. And we're trying to come up with those costs with Chamberlain. But there is additional, there's additional civil engineering required on this project. We're not quite there in where we are at in design right now. But we'd be happy to bring you back projected costs and things that we are anticipating before the end of the year.
Thank you. Okay, can I get a mover? Move, we have the motion. Do you want? Okay, if you could read the motion again, Madam Clerk.
Certainly. So the motion reads that Recreation Report R 24-10 dated June 19th, 2024. With respect to the Westshore Recreation Facility geothermal borehole and conductivity testing be received. And further that council approve an additional 65,000 to be funded 58,500 from the Development Charges Reserve Fund and $6,500 from the Recreation Facilities Reserve. And further that staff proceed with the described scope of work for the proposed borehole and conductivity testing when pricing is received up to the upset limit of $65,000.
Thank you. Do I have a mover? Moved by Member Cox, seconded by Member Brennan. All in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. Oops, thank you. Okay, we're going to item F 3.1 Public Works Report, Michael Land Drive speed limit. Over to Mr. Vieira, please.
Good afternoon. So through the chair, while staff were looking into our next steps to implement the 2024 traffic calming pilot. More specifically, the speed humps on Michael Land Drive. We noted that the speed limit is currently 50 kilometers an hour and it's not posted. Excuse me, through review of tax manual for traffic calming and applicable implementation of traffic calming methods, staff feel that it's important to post the speed limit on this section of road. We note that Michael Land Drive is a good candidate for a 40 zone, considering things like the very narrow right of way, the reduced setbacks to the buildings, as well as the pedestrian traffic on the roadway. Further, recent results of a traffic study demonstrate that the 85th percentile of drivers are actually traveling at about 29 kilometers an hour, indicating the speed the drivers are comfortable traveling at on this roadway. So in conclusion, we recommend setting and posting the speed limit on Michael Land Drive to 40 kilometers an hour.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions? Yes, Member Cox.
I have a question from Councillor Jansen. Are we planning to do line painting on Michael Land Drive through the chair?
Through the chair, yes, we are. So any of the marks you may have seen out there recently is from an application for paving at the Legion there. Yeah, through future road improvements, we do plan on doing some line painting, typical solid white edge type thing with a yellow dividing line. So yeah, that's to come in the future.
Okay, supplementary. Also, I noted on the edge of the parking lot at the Legion, the lines. Now, are those lines an indicator that there could be a sidewalk in the future?
Through the chair, so there's no official plans
Immediate,
right now,
no.
but yes, in the future.
So we're going to leave those so people can see the difference between our road and the parking lot?
So once the new parking lot is paved, there are some plans to kind of paint out an area with some hash lines to indicate where the parking lot meets the roadway. So yeah, people aren't driving on that section of property.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we have a motion, please?
Certainly. The motion reads the Public Works Report number W 24-016 dated June 19th, 2024. With respect to the speed limit on Michael Land Drive be received, and further that the speed limit on Michael Land Drive be set and posted to 40 kilometers an hour.
Thank you. Do I have a mover? Oh, Member Jansen? Oh, you're voting. You're moving. Thank you. Okay. We're doing the mime. Moved by Member Jansen, seconded by Member Cox. All in favor? And carried. Thank you very much. Item F 3.2, Public Works Report W 24017, Extended Road Closure of Hamilton Street. Over to you, Mr. Burke, please.
And thank you through the chair. So this report actually first highlights the effectiveness of our permitting system. You know, for road closures and events, we were able to coordinate with two different applications. For the same day. Which is Canada Day. Sorry for the interruption there. Yeah, so for Canada Day, there was two different closures. So we met with both applicants and arrived at a plan that works for all. It does include an extended duration closure on Hamilton Street, which does exceed the bylaws. So that's why it's in front of you today for an exemption. But outside of that, it's a bit of an extension to a long-standing Lions Club event that happens on the Canada Day in Washago.
Thank you. Member Cox?
Yeah, through the chair to Derek. We did talk that day, and I want Craig, if you could just stay for 1 second on this. We did talk about this temporary road closure for the Lions Club, and they wanted it for much longer. And they were saying how much bigger their whole event has become. And we did discuss the fact that we do have a park and we do have a parking lot at the community center, and that this may be the last year for safety and for the size of the event, that we should work together, the events committee and the Lions Club, in order to ensure that they may have one of those spaces to do their event. And thus we wouldn't have to worry about a road closure, or if there was an accident, we have no detour routes through, and it would just make it a safer, better event for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion, please?
Certainly, the motion reads that Public Works Report number W 24-017 dated June 19th, 2024, with respect to the extended road closure on Hamilton Street be received, and further that the application for road closure of Hamilton Street from June 30th till 10 p.m. on July 1st be permitted.
Thank you. And moved by Member McIntyre, seconded by Member Taylor. All in favor? And carried. Thank you. We're on to item F4.1, the fire report, F24-001, community risk assessment. And I welcome Jake Hawkins, our fire prevention officer, and Rich Lowell, the director of fire and emergency services. Welcome and thank you for attending.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. So we had a entire regulation 37818 for community risk assessments that mandated we needed to complete this assessment. We needed to look at mandatory profiles. There was actually a technical guideline released by the fire marshal that essentially laid out the information that's included in this report. So if you look at neighboring municipalities' reports, they are all fairly similar in layout and information included. So we had to do research on a geographic profile of the municipality, your roads and waterways and such, the building stock profile, what kind of occupancies are in the municipality, critical infrastructure, our bridges, power lines, natural gas mains and things like that, demographics, the people that live in the municipality, ages, what kind of people, languages spoken, things like this. The hazards in the municipality. We did a public safety response profile. So it's the type of incidents that we would go to. Community services, what capabilities we have within the community. Economic profile, so what kind of drivers we have that bring in that economic factor to the municipality. And history profile, all the past events. So we have to take each profile, we have to assess the risk. So when you think something like your 100-year flood, or your every 20 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be, a tornado or an ice storm, versus things that happen more frequently, whether you have the storm that came in last week, for example, right? So we look at all the different factors. We grade the hazards. We have to rate and organize them so that we can identify which areas we have sufficient capabilities to handle, and then which ones we might need to look at adding additional capabilities, or we might have to reach out to our neighboring partners to help facilitate. So something like a hazmat response. If you only have a accident on the highway where you require a full hazmat response every 20 years, doesn't make a lot of sense for us to get a full hazmat technical level team with all of that equipment necessary, right? So the report speaks to all of those factors. It's fairly similar to the HIRA, except it's very fire department specific. So it doesn't have some of the more overreaching factors that the HIRA would have, but it's very specific to what we would do. So there's a summary from the report, kind of indicates which factors we looked at, things like growth trends, what areas are seeing increases in population, where we could kind of expect to have our issues. You know, we have some older building stock that's not necessarily getting renovated, so it's at risk. If those places choose to not, for instance, put in a sprinkler system or something to mitigate the risk, what are we going to do to try and mitigate that through something such as proactive inspections and ensuring that combustible materials aren't accumulating or something of that nature, that extinguishers are present. The final sections of the report give you a good breakdown of how we have to look at ranking it. So if each municipality uses the guideline, the rankings are the same in how they would achieve it. So it's a very unbiased way of achieving that ranking. So if it says, for instance, your probability gives you a very good indicator of if you've had an incident this year and previous year and the previous year, it's essentially certain that you're probably going to have it in the subsequent year, right? And ones that occur every 5 years would have that 20% kind of chance if it's 20 years and so on. When you had your last incident, it gives you a very good methodology for breaking down how frequently you expect things to happen. You assign it to this matrix and score everything. So if you look through, you'll notice, for instance, rail line incidents are very highly ranked. It's because we've had them historically. They don't happen every year, but they're major incidents when they do happen. So the consequence is very high. The frequency is high enough that when you multiply those scores together, it ranks it extremely high on the list, right? Whereas something like an industrial fire, because we don't have many industrial occupancies to begin with in our municipality, and we've had very few incidents at those occupancies, scores a lot lower, even though you might be naturally inclined if you live beside that large industrial occupancy to think that would be a very high risk because of the infrequency of occurrences and the type of place it is. It's actually very low. So certainly, yes, if there's any questions on the report, we're happy to answer those.
Thank you very much. Over to the members. Member Brennan, let's start with you, please.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Really interesting report. It's fascinating. I just wanted to add something to help you here that you may not be aware of. The CR Club just announced that Canadian wildfires are twice as likely to happen right now as a result of the burning of fossil fuels and the fire-prone weather. So you may need a helicopter if things keep going on, I'll tell you. So the fact that I see, the high area forest in Severn Township and your concerns around that are more than warranted to address. So good for you. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussion? Member Cox.
I can't find it right now, but we were talking about this earlier through the chair, about batteries and the more predominant e-bikes. People have all their outdoor lawnmowers, their weed eaters, and they're storing them here and there. And then there's also the hybrid cars and the electric cars and the batteries. And I was just wondering if it was something, because there seems to be an increase in the reports of fires, like I think said 2 or 3 in the last couple of months even. Is that something that maybe you could work with Jake with, oh God, her name just went out of my head. Communications, Tracy, that we could put some information out for our residents, because I know I just learned, because of my family member said to me, you just don't leave these laying around, and you don't charge your phone with some dollar store phone charger, and you don't put an extension cord on this, and you don't do that. And I really don't believe that the average people think about that or know that. And I've learned it, but I just wondered if it was some type of a good education, because more and more of the electrical things are showing up, and it is becoming more predominant in our lifestyle.
Yes, through the chair. It's actually been on our mind. So, for example, I know Aurelia, one of their retirement homes, they've actually moved all the motorized scooters outside into a shelter because of worries about lithium-ion battery fires. That's something we intend to increase our public education on. We're actually starting with Coldwater seniors residents. We're going to go in there and into the seniors apartments and do a bit with them. Certainly we can work with communications officer and get some more public information out there. We actually have some training opportunities as well that have come up for us to increase our volunteers, firefighter and full-time staff knowledge to get some more information in our hands, and we can disseminate that into the public and try and increase awareness so we can avoid those incidents.
Supplementary, I just also would like, there's some events coming up, like I didn't know if you were doing anything with the July 13th, the BIA one or the fairs and those types of things, where that type of information could be put out so that other people could see them and become more aware. Because I just don't think I don't think people do it on purpose. I just don't think they're aware of the danger of it. Thank you.
Yes, we, the Discover Coldwater and the farmers market, the fall fair, some of these events that we're looking at attending this year, we could certainly look at getting some more information out there to try and mitigate the risk and see if we can avoid those incidents.
Thank you. I also was fascinated with this report and it was very well done. One question in section 4.8, which is tourism. I live in the Cumberland Beach area, so we have a high percentage of weekend and residents that are non-permanent, I guess. But within that section, both on page 41 and page 42, I'm just wondering how we can further reach residents from the concerns that you've outlined. So for example, there's a higher incidence, I guess, of people who stay overnight, et cetera. There may be campfires and things. We may have, you mentioned on both those pages, short-term rentals specifically, and they not aware of the rules perhaps, because we don't have a process for capturing that. And so I'm just wondering from a fire lens that you have, and I've read the report as far as incident responses, et cetera. So I'm just wondering if that's an area that you have a future concern on, if you have a past concern on, if there's any targeting or anything that you might be planning as a result of bringing this report to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so certainly some of there's different concerns there. So the open air burning piece, absolutely, we've had some incidents where we've attended. We would give them information package, inform them about the bylaw, and tell them, yes, you need to get a permit. You need to make sure people follow the rules of the bylaw. So that piece, that response to incident lens, when you apply that, works pretty good. People do it once, tend to not do it again. Getting the information in their hands ahead of time, we would need to know where all the STRs are, who they're owned by, so we can make contact. I would love to get information packages out to them about all kinds of subjects, open air burning, water safety, wearing PFDs, life jackets, things like that. Certainly fireworks safety and some of these other things that are a concern, so we can mitigate any potential for issues, right? So something we could probably work on with other departments, would be a collaborative effort. If they are aware of the locations, we can try and reach out to them and get some information to them and try and mitigate it. So.
Thank you very much. I know when I toured the fire halls, it was fascinating to see the training facilities that you have and the process that you have for our firefighters. I think they're very impressive. You mentioned a number of training needs within your report, and I'm not sure if you could help me as council. Are these sort of immediate needs? You talk about rail disaster training. You talk about electric vehicle training, among other things. So you mentioned that those are perhaps on your bucket list, or but I just want to know from a planning. I'm already thinking into November and budget time, but is it a priority list, or if you could talk to us about all the training that you've outlined that you can't do in-house?
So yeah, with the report and identifying the training needs, so it will be things that we'll be bringing forward, I'll say in future budget deliberations. Now, part of that will be as we investigate solutions, I'll say working with our partners such as CN or CP Rail specific to that incident to see, let's say if they take an hour to respond, what our role would be for that first hour, first 2 hours, and see if it's something that we can do. With our makeup of our department and a lot of departments across Ontario, unless you get into a major municipal center, some of that specialty training for cost of equipment and then trying to keep staff certified is can be very expensive and or hard to maintain people's certifications. But it is something that we are going forward with, and some things, yes, we can do in-house for sure. But yeah, future budgets, you'll see some requests come through based on our training needs or equipment needs.
Thank you. My last acknowledgement, and it's the first time I've seen this here. It's on page 70 about, is there a better way to make the community safer is the question in your report. And you talk about public education, and you mentioned the use of digital signs. So I thought that was very interesting as a consideration. Member Burkett.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair, and Jake, thank you, and Richie, thank you very much for the report. I think this is the first time we've seen something like this, is it not? I think it is.
It is, yes. So I'll say part of this and why through the OFM that they want it presented to council is it's to help when we redo, and it'll be coming up, our establish and regulating bylaws. So because we work with you collaboratively, it's to assist you, I'll say assist us in deciding what services we want to provide to the municipality. So this will sort of come through as a review basically every year, and some years they might be changes, other years there might not be. So again, very similar to the hazard information risk assessment on the emergency management side. This plan sort of mirrors what's in that, except it's specific to a fire response.
Okay,
So,
thank
so
you.
you'll see that come forward, yes.
Supplementary, if I may, through you, Madam Chair. So I should know this, but I don't. If someone wants a fire permit, do they have to come into the office, or with our new automated system, Andrew, are we able to pay for it with a Visa card over the phone? Is that some way we could do it, or I'm not sure how it would work. Sorry, Andrew, to put you on the spot.
Sorry, you'll need to use your microphone too. Thank you.
Now, the only reason I'm asking is sometimes people, it's a hassle to drive in if that's what they have to do. And it would be so much easier if there was a way that we could just do it, as I said, over the phone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As that's a little bit of a segue into the next report. But the Township e-services payment gateway is set to open. And you will be able to, right now, you'll be able to view your tax bill and your water bills and pay them online using a credit card. We are going to add, and we're working on seeing if we can add the fire permits as quickly as possible. And so they'll be also, they won't be able to phone in and give their credit card over the phone, but they will be able to pay for it directly online.
Madam Chair, if I may. So when someone phones and says there's a fire and you show up, how many people actually do not have permits? Like, are you finding that there's a lot, or like, I'm just curious.
We don't have the exact numbers with us, but there's a fair number that don't have a permit, but we don't get repeat offenders, right? So we show up, we say, you need to get a permit, here's the information, and then they get the permit. And sometimes, honestly, by the time we go to the incident and get back to the township office, the permit's actually already been applied for. They've literally done it within minutes. We find that happen fairly frequently. So the messaging is getting out, and it seems to be effective for getting people to get permits. But there are definitely still people that don't have permits, and there are people that claim they don't know about the open air burning ban. So there's still some people, we've done a lot of messaging to try and get that information into people's hands. But certainly there's some people that don't get the message. I find a fair amount of them are the folks that come in, you know, I'm borrowing this cottage from someone, or I'm renting, whatever the case may be. They're coming up for one weekend of the year, so they don't know about our bylaw, and they don't proactively seek out the information.
Thanks. Oh, go ahead.
Just triggered supplementary from A through you, Madam Chair. So that short-term rental, I know some years ago, and I don't know when, we actually had someone go through, I guess, all the Airbnbs, and there were 73, I remember the number 73 short-term rentals that that person found in our township. And I don't know if we still have those records. And I don't know if that would be any help for you to maybe, because it seems those are the ones that are a problem, that are burning when they should, well, they don't know, right? And unfortunately, you get called.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Member McIntyre, please.
I don't want to leave the fire department behind, but since our friend Andrew brought it up about paying with credit cards, if I want to pay my taxes by credit card, are you going to charge me a fee, 2%, 5%?
Sorry, that's the next agenda
Well,
item.
he brought it up. That's why
Oh, but
I
we
just
have a-
want to step in the fire department.
I'm just wondering if we could defer that question about property taxes to the next agenda item.
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, over to Member Brennan and then Member Cox.
I'm a little confused. Airbnbs then are owned by people that I would expect be the applicants for a fire permit, not the people that are coming and going on the site. So I don't understand the issue here, because the people that are renting know darn well what they have to do. There's all kinds of rules around Airbnb use, even now just to qualify the list in a lot of cases. So like, we can't be blaming the guy that goes there for the weekend. There should be a permit on the site already.
Yeah, through the chair. So certainly, I would say that the ones that are doing things right and legitimate, absolutely, if they're posted on our professional website and it lists all these things they have to have, and the owner has applied for a permit and following the rules, then someone rents that property, they should be going, here's the permit, please follow the rules if they can have a fire. You may find there's the odd property where the owner is expecting anybody to have a fire, and people just decide they're going to. They might create a fire pit on the property or such. There's also some properties where those transactions aren't really an official thing, right? Certainly I could, if you had a cottage, I could say, hey, can I borrow your cottage for the weekend or something to that effect, right? If I pay you money to do that, it's essentially an off the books short-term rental, right?
Yes.
So you get a little bit of these other situations that come up. Honestly, there's not a lot of the we'll call it official short-term rentals that seem to generate burn complaints.
But, okay, but still, the legal implications of something going wrong, to me, go to the owner of the property. There might be some, you might go after the renter, but at the end of the day, you light a fire beside my house and set my garage on fire. I don't care if your mother was using the property that weekend. I care about you paying the bill. Right? So when you're doing enforcement, how does it work?
Yeah, so you have to have permission of the owner to get a burn permit to have the fire. So if you're not following the bylaw, you're in contravention. If you have a fire without permit, you're in contravention of the bylaw to begin with. If you get a permit without the owner's permission, you're also contravening the rules, right? So the owner needs to be aware, in the current system, they have to approve that you're allowed to get that permit. So the responsible people, they should be, in theory, if I was a short-term rental owner, in my mind, I would want to come in on January 1st, get my permit for the year.
Yeah.
And then I'm providing that as part of that package to everybody that rents the property. This is the location of the fire. Here's the rules. It's on you to follow the rules, and everybody's happy, right? That's how the system should work. And if somebody's working outside of that, then certainly look at enforcement. If they don't have a permit, we get there, we're going to make them put the fire out anyway. So
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go to Member Cox, but I just following that. So then the responsibility or the transaction is between the registered homeowner, the property owner, and the township? and not the tenant? Or I'm just curious because I do get questions about that. So I may have a house in my neighborhood and there's someone renting it, they're on a lease. So, and there's been conversations about, well, I don't need a fire permit, or they should provide it. Is there a rule around that? I'm just curious.
Through the chair, yes, there's a rule. The tenants can get a permit with the owner's permission. So when you apply for the fire permit, that is an option. You select whether or not you're the owner or the tenant. So if the owner's not on site, if they have several properties and they're allowing their tenants to burn, those tenants can apply for the permits and do it that way, but they need to have permission.
Thank you. Member Cox.
Yeah, through the chair. I was just thinking when you were talking about seasonal people and, providing information on different things that you might want to maybe talk to the septic reinspection. The septic reinspection person, they hand out a kit, like a knowledge kit with, what to do with your septics, what's going on here, all kinds of information. So that might be a place where the fire and the rules and the part about the battery or anything that you have could go into that package, because when they go and do their inspection, they do it and then they leave this bag of things on the door so people have it, so that they know what to do or who to call or different entities. And I was thinking that when you're out there going to these ones that they don't, if there was some type of with a magnet on it, you could just hand it to them and say, you might want to put that on the fridge for the next people who come here, and these are the rules and this is what you have to follow. Just trying to help do some public awareness and make it easy.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. We're certainly looking at some options through the communications officer. We've been talking about, that the Severn bulletin comes out and tax bills and some of these options to get messaging into other avenues. But that's a great idea. We'll pursue that as well and see if we can get anything out there.
Sorry, because I know Tracy has gotten some information from me for different things that I've given her to give to Amanda.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask the clerk for a motion, please?
Certainly. The motion reads that fire report number F24-001 dated June 19th, 2024, with respect to the community risk assessment, be received for information.
Thank you. Moved by Member Burkett, seconded by Member Brennan. All in favor? Thank you. And thank you very much for coming. We are on to item F5.1, which is a corporate services report C24-001, fees and credit card payments. Over to you, Mr. Plunkett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The report in front of council is pointing out that we are ready to launch the e-services portal, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. You will be able to pay, the second we launch it, you will be able to review and pay your property taxes and your water bills online. And you will be able to pay via a credit card or even with your debit or Visa. Currently at the front counter, we do offer the service. We can now accept a credit card. We have, up to this point, been telling customers we do not accept it because we have not established a fee to charge those users to use their credit card. We are quite happy to begin accepting the credit cards, but we don't think the cost to use those credit cards to the township should be transferred to the residents. It should be kept in the hands of the people that wish to use their credit card to pay that bill. So you will see in the report that I have done a little bit of an analysis on quite a few credit cards available, and we did try to come up with an average of what those fees will be when they're charged to the township. And we did settle on an estimated fee that we should charge everyone of 2%. And I'm here today to get council's endorsement of that 2% so that we can start immediately accepting credit cards for payments.
Thank you very much for your report. Member Burkett.
Thank you to you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Andrew, for the report. Happy to support that. I know from my business, I think the law has changed where you can charge a person that fee. It used to be that businesses absorbed that cost. You tried to get the best machine you can get for the lowest price that they charge, and it amounts to a lot of money at the end of the month, a lot of money. So happy to endorse that.
And if I can quickly respond, you're right. Until about 3 years ago, you could not, it's not that you couldn't charge the fee. You were allowed to charge the fee, but Visa and MasterCard wouldn't let you. But now they will allow you to transfer it to the customer.
Okay, thank you. So my question to you is, the township is charged a fee on every credit card transaction. Is that correct? Is that what I read?
Correct.
Thank you. And are you or are you not only using Visa or MasterCard? Because I know you mentioned American Express, for example.
So in the report, I did make reference to American Express, but the fees aren't established on American Express. So at this point in time, I am recommending that we only accept Visa or MasterCard.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, can I have a motion, please?
Certainly, the motion reads that Corporate Services Report number C 24-001 dated June 19th, 2024 regarding fees for credit card payments be received. And the council approve a 2% fee to be charged on all credit card payments accepted by the Township of Severn.
Sorry, I just have another question that I didn't write down. Will residents be advised in advance of using their credit card that they're incurring a fee? Because the fee is fairly steep, as in your report on $1,000 tax bill, they'll be charged $200 or $20, sorry.
If I can, so the payment portal, it will identify the fee correct right away. In the office, we will train the staff that deal with the front counter that they need to make the resident aware that they will be charged a 2% fee.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a mover? Moved by member Brennan, seconded by member Burkett, all in favor? And Carrie, thank you very much, Mr. Plunkett. We are over to agenda item G, which we are deferring to next Wednesday, the 26th at our council meeting. So agenda item H, I'm looking to our committee members for updates, and I'll start with member Taylor representing Ward 1.
Thank you through the chair. I'll 3 items to report. Severn Sound Environmental Association. This Monday coming up, we're having a budget meeting, so it'll be interesting how that goes on. Yeah, it's 1 p.m. up in Midland, but it's the I think it's going to be streamed as well. In dealing with Severn Sound is going to be hosting our next webinar, which is number 5 in a series of 6 a week Thursday, which is June 27th, and it's going to be on shoreline resilience. And the 6th and final one will be in September. So these have been well done, hosted by Severn Sound, introduced by Councillor Brennan, and it's been a very good success. Coldwater Mill, we've had a few projects almost done there. The exterior has been painted. A new fence is being installed. It should be done in the next day or two. And we've actually had Severn Sound come on the property and given us advice on what to do with shoreline resilience as far as plants and shrubs. So they're on side for a nominal fee. They'll recommend plants and shrubs. So it's all systems go. And on June the 12th, I attended the AMO cybersecurity, very informative, very scary session on what can happen. And I'm with member Brennan. I think we need David Campbell to keep these mini online things that we do with the quizzes and stuff. I think they seem simple, but they're to keep you on your toes and keep them coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Jansen, I don't think we can get an update from you. You may be able to report it in writing if you want. And could that be attached to the minutes? Yes, if you don't mind emailing it to the clerk, that would be awesome. Ward 3, member Brennan, please.
Thank you. Yeah. The Ontario District Agricultural Society rodeo is this weekend for all you Rough Riders. And we had the pleasure of meeting with Craig and Tracy, the chair and I, on May 23rd to look at improving collaboration to promote events consistent with our economic strategy and re-tourism. And that was very, very productive meeting. And certainly they were happy with that. We're actually doing a bit of a staff tour for people this week at the facility. I was quite surprised actually that some of the staff had never been on the property. So we're going to try to fix that. Also, the big thing we're working on right now, and I guess a lot of organizations are, I had done this in the form, bylaw updates for the ONCA legislation. And I was absolutely amazed to find that the patent for this particular organization, 1850. 1850. We can't even find it. For the Aurelia District Chamber of Commerce, we met May 28th. The primary discussion was interesting, was around revenue sources for the chamber. You know, so we all have the same challenges. For the chamber, actually, for our chamber, membership fees, Service Ontario, you know, they have a contract there for Service Ontario, and the operation down at the lake are the three main sources of revenue. And it's interesting, just the main discussions. Some of the main discussions that the chamber is getting into are combining chambers to prove their effectiveness for advocacy purposes. There was one suggestion to not combine them, but to combine efforts around advocacy to the government. And of course, they're also pushing the idea that they need to directly advocate with local businesses to promote the chamber and chamber goals to the residents of our Aurelia and area. So that's sort of what they were last week. Finally, the physician recruitment. We have not met since my last update. I've already circulated the student initiative that we conducted recently. The deputy mayor circulated the posting there in Aurelia today. It's great. We had a bunch of young kids that were trying to brainwash into coming up here. It's good stuff. I want to report that the Aurelia Rotary Club is offering again to support physician recruitment in the area, among other charities, in their car lottery. I have booked myself to sell tickets in Coldwater at the Coldwater Fair in September. Anybody who wants to join me on any occasions to sell tickets, let me know. That's it.
Thank you very much. Ward 5 member McIntyre, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too attended the June the 12th scary cyberspace information session with other members. It was informative, I must say. The Oswego Events Committee are in position to have the parade July the 1st, 1 o'clock. We've got judges of floats and kids on bicycles, etc. We have a joint that I would like everyone to attend that if they possibly could. It's a wonderful event. Judith will attest to that because she's been front center of most of it. The Joint Accessibility Committee is meeting on the 21st, which is the same day as the opening of the sports complexes, courts at Centennial Park. I'm going to make an attempt to do something in the morning from where they start. It's Joint Accessibility Committee is with conjunction with Ramera Township. I know that Councillor Tutu is going to be there, and I believe we start in Ramera. So I'm going to attempt to get to one or two of those and then go over to the sports opening. So what wraps it up for me.
Thank you very much. Over to Deputy Mayor Cox, please.
I sent out the county information on streamlining planning and the MCR, and I would like to speak to, well, maybe, oh, I can, there we go. The long-term garbage export. I will send that out to you too. You can read it. But what is happening at the county, we've been exporting 25,000 tons of curbside garbage annually to extend the life of the county's landfills. The last county-owned and operated landfill is projected to be closed by 2027. That will be Oro Madani. and it's got an allowance for a 1-year emergency. Most of the landfills in Ontario will be full by 2032. So the county, and I have to give them credit, they thought about this and the staff said, you know what? Once all this comes down, there's going to be a ton of people looking someplace to take their garbage. And if the states ever close the door, we could be done. So they put it on RFP, and it's with Emerald. And we've done a 20-year external plan with them. And the interesting part is that it's in Brampton, and it is the incinerator site that we've been to. Some of us have already been to. So it shortens the haul, and I think the county trucks can now do it down there and back. And we have a 20-year starting in 2027. Next year, 2026. Anyway, 25. So I thought that was very progressive of them, because I really worry that it's going to become an issue. Like when you have no more landfills, and I might as well personally, I think that you're going to see incineration become popular, because the problem is though, is that you have to make sure, like you would have to have Durham and York and somebody, because you have to have so much garbage to keep it going to make it efficient so it works. The other interesting thing here is they turn their waste into steam, heat, electricity, and hydrogen. So they provide some of the services to businesses down the street from them. And were you with us, Mark, when we went there? You were. We went, yeah, with the county.
I've been there.
Yeah. The other one one I want to bring up is library. And I'm going to send this to Wanda, is we found this report from the Aurelia Library, and it said that the Chippewas of Brahma First Nation, Township of Oromadani, and Severn Township provide $130,529 worth of money to them to pay. So we're not sure though how they come up with the annual contract. So I'm going to talk to Dee about it, and we're going to send it in, because they're basically saying that we pay the same amount as Oromadani, and Oromadani had less residents. We only had 1,400, and Oromadani had more than that. I can't find all my numbers, 1,437 or something. So it's not jiving. The numbers aren't jiving. So we're going to send something to them to figure out how they're doing this, because we should not be paying the same as another municipality if our subscriber number is less than theirs, because it should be per subscriber, and that's what we'll look at. I think I went to the cybersecurity too, and thank you very much. It was kind of scary, but sure we'll all make it through. And that's it.
Thank you. Before I go to Mayor Burkett, just on the library board, I will resend you the library board package that I circulated a few months ago, and it gives a spreadsheet and the breakdown of the users and the number of frequencies of borrowers, et cetera. So I'll give you that as a resource.
Sorry, we get that every month from them. This was just some handout, an annual report handout with this total number in it. And if you look at the handouts that we've got with who it is, they're not jiving. So I'm telling Dee to get hold of her, and then we can figure it
out. Thank you. Mayor Burkett, please.
Thank you through Madam Chair. So just to add to the waste part, when you incinerate, there's a third residue that's left that has to be disposed of. And, I forgot to ask that at the county. We're paying so much a ton. I would assume the company that's burning the garbage would absorb the cost of that and then have to transport that. I think you take it down to Walker's down in Niagara Falls. They've got a huge landfill there that we also toured as well. It was quite a facility. I want to thank First Member Brennan for attending those two events that I couldn't attend, the Lighthouse and the church. Thank you very much for doing that.
It was fun.
Thank you. They had at Northbrook Farms, they had the volunteer appreciation for the hospital. It was very well attended. A great group of people that devote and volunteer their time. And as I spoke, I said, even though we have doctors and nurses and staff here at the hospital, the first people that someone sick coming through the hospital meets are you. And so I conveyed my thanks on behalf of everyone here and residents of Severn. And actually, I was the only mayor that is always attended that. This year, Mayor Greenlaw from Oro was there. Usually they're too busy to attend, but a great group of people. I think those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. For Ward 4, my updates, May 29th, I attended affordable housing webinar that was led by the CMHC, hosted by the City of Aurelia, and affordable housing is near and dear to our heart, and it's also mentioned in the official plan, etc. June 19th, oh, that's today at 3:30. So in a few minutes, I have the Aurelia Library Board meeting this week, and I'm not sure if anyone mentioned, on the 21st and 22nd, I believe we're all attending the opening ceremonies of the sports fields in Weshego and Marchmount. All the details are on the Severn Township website, and we hope to see you all there. On July 1st, together with Deputy Mayor Cox and Member McIntyre, is the Weshego Canada Day Parade. And I need to give a shout out to the St. Francis Church that's on the main street of Weshego, that we use their grounds to set up the parade every year. They're also hosting a Great Canadian Barbecue lunch starting at 11 that morning, a bake sale, and an indoor garage sale. So I hope that we can support them too. And on July 6th, which is a Saturday from 4 to 7 p.m. at Timberline Park in Ward 4, the Westshore Events Committee is hosting their Taylor Swift Dance Party family event. Thank you. Now we're on to agenda item I, Chief Administrative Officer updates, and over to you, CAO, please.
Thank you. I'll be quick because it's been a really long day, but just on the sports court opening, we're watching the weather very carefully for Saturday. So on Friday, we will decide whether we're going to go ahead or not on Saturday. So we will do lots of notice if we're canceling Saturday or thinking about rescheduling it. But so stay tuned on Friday. If it cancels, we'll make sure there's signage and social media and all of those other things. But we are mindful of the weather. They're calling for a bad storm. Friday hopefully looks good, except hot.
Thank you. And just quickly, last month you gave us an update on the EDO recruitment. Do you have an update that you could share with us?
I'm working on it. Nothing I can share at the moment.
No, that's fine. And for anyone listening, that's our Economic Development Officer position. Okay, agenda item J, council is now moving into a closed session. Over to our clerk. May I have a motion read to move the committee into closed session?
Thank you. So the motion reads that committee resolve in a closed session that the meeting is hereby now closed to the public pursuant to the Municipal Act SO 2001, Chapter 25, Section 2392, for the purpose of considering personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal local board employees, litigation and potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting municipality or local board.
Thank you. And moved by Member Taylor, seconded by Member McIntyre. All in favor? Thank you. By Member Jansen, seconded by Member Burkett. All in favor? And carried. Thank you. And do we have a motion to adjourn, please?
Just that this meeting being is here now by adjourned at 3:15 p.m.
Thank you. Moved by Member McIntyre, seconded by Member Burkett. All in favor and carried. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next Wednesday.